All right, it's 6 o'clock. I'll call the meeting back to order. Meeting of the Carver Select Board for Tuesday, November 16th, 2021. This meeting is being cablecast by Area 58 Community Access Media, Channel 15, and will be posted by Area 58 on YouTube as soon as possible. There are openings on several committees. Please refer to the Select Board page on our website for a listing and application. If we could all stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Belbin, could you read our community prayer?
Yes, sir. Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that make us all we can become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. And especially we lift our prayers for all the citizens of our community that we have been allowed to serve and that they may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek. And keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and thoughts. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Belbin.
Thank you.
First item on our agenda tonight is citizens' participation. Are there any members of the public that wish to address the board? Seeing none. Next up is the appointment of special police officers, Scott Sampson and Christopher Mahoney. Chief?
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We certainly can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to come before you and speak for a few minutes. Tonight I'd like to request the appointment of 2 additional special police officers. As we've discussed in the past, special police officers bolster the number of officers who are available to work police details, controlling traffic at road construction sites, or providing security at the fair at Edaville. Special police officers do not work patrol shifts, must purchase their own uniforms, and must maintain their own required yearly in-service training. Special police officers must have a minimum of the MPTC Reserve Academy for training. Special police officers are not paid full-time officers, but rather receive compensation by working private details. Over the past few months, we have had several details that we could not fill for various reasons. I would like to ask you to add a few additional special police officers to assist with that issue. In order to do so, I have identified 2 candidates for possible appointment. Both have completed the MPTC required basic training and attend yearly in-service training to maintain their proficiency. Both have worked within Carver Public Safety for the town for many years, and both are Carver residents. The 2 are Staff Sergeant Scott Sampson. Scott is a full-time police officer with the Bridgewater State University Police Department and has been so since 1997. In addition, he has worked for Carver EMS for the past 17 years and was also a public safety dispatcher for us for several years. Also, Deputy Christopher Mahoney. Chris is currently a deputy sheriff with the Plymouth County Sheriff's Department. He has completed the MPTC Reserve Academy. In addition, he works for us as a per diem public safety dispatcher and as a lieutenant with the fire department. Both men offer experience and training as a law enforcement officer, and I would like to recommend that they be appointed as special police officers for the town tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Questions from the board?
I'll make a motion that we approve both Scott Sampson and Christopher Mahoney.
I'll second.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is the vote to ratify the police union contract. Earlier tonight, the chief presented us with a new contract in executive session. And is there a motion?
I'll make a motion we approve the police union contract.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next is a discussion and possible vote of traffic and public safety concerns related to King Richard's Fair. And then there's another item after that. So, Chief.
Thank you again for having me tonight. I'm here tonight because we obviously all witnessed the extreme increase in traffic on Route 58 this year with the fair. I've written some words on it. I'd like to go through those, and then I can certainly answer any questions, receive any suggestions, and hopefully we can take some action to move forward so that we don't repeat that next year. But if you don't mind, I'll read through what I put on paper first, and then we'll go from there, if that's okay. Tonight I would like to take a few minutes to discuss the traffic issues that arose regarding the King Regis Fair this past season. I'm hopeful that after this, you, the members of the Select Board, and the public will have a better understanding of what occurred and feel confident that we are working on solutions to minimize the traffic impact in the future. I ask that we keep in mind this was the first year back in operation after being closed the previous year due to COVID-19. Judging by the level of traffic, many people were interested in coming and getting out of their houses, I think. While it is quite possible this level of traffic is an anomaly and may not be repeated next year, we owe it to the residents of the town, the patrons of the fair, and everyone who is affected by the heavy traffic to look into strategies that might help to mitigate any future issues. I've been working for the town since 2002, and this year was by far the busiest I have seen with fair traffic. Each year we have always seen at least a few days of very heavy traffic. But this year we had at least 8 days where the traffic was extremely heavy, causing large delays. We received many complaints by phone to the station. Our officers working the street received many complaints from people driving by. I'm sure the Select Board received many complaints as well. And we take the complaints very seriously, and our officers and the people there did the best they could with the situation they had at hand. Some of the issues that exacerbated the problems were the extraordinary amount of vehicles traveling to the fair this year, Waze and other GPS apps that brought people in from many different directions that hadn't happened in the past, coming in from through Mayflower Road and Meadow Street. Even coming southbound on 58 is different from what we've seen in the past. Traffic for the, I just said that. Our officers and fair personnel work diligently at getting vehicles off Route 58 as quickly and safely as possible to allow through traffic to get by. Parking vehicles is a very deliberate and time-consuming operation. Personnel in the lots did their jobs as efficiently and skillfully as possible, but you can only park vehicles so fast and remain safe. In the past, we have used cones to create 3 lanes on Route 58 from the fair entrance south to Mayflower Road. This allows through traffic to use the outer lanes, while fair traffic can be stacked in the middle lane waiting to enter the fair. This method has been quite successful when levels of traffic are moderate. This year, the volume of traffic from both directions made that plan ineffectual at times. As in the past, once the 3 parking lots are filled, overflow traffic is directed to park on Saviors Ave. Patrons then walk down Route 58 into the fair. This year we saw patrons park their vehicles in residence yards and walk into the fair as well. This greatly increased pedestrian traffic into the fair and also caused delays. We even witnessed many people parking along Mayflower Road and walking in as well. A quick call to DPW that night was able to get them to put signs out so that there wouldn't be any parking there the next day, so we resolved that. Despite the increased level of traffic, we still always were able to get emergency vehicles, police, fire, ambulances through the area with little delay because we are in radio contact with dispatch. We know when they're coming, and we just stop traffic at both lanes and get the emergency vehicles through. So we did not have, at any point in time, when a fire engine or an ambulance or a police car couldn't get through to get to somebody to help them. It's been brought up as an issue, but it's a non-issue. We just stop all the traffic and get the emergency vehicles through. However, the one issue that presented itself was getting call firefighters in their personal vehicles through the traffic to the fire station. Chief Weston mitigated this by staffing the stations on the weekends to ensure timely response to emergencies. But there was an additional cost to this, to staffing those stations that the town had to absorb. Also, at the end of the day, when traffic's exiting the fair, there's congestion caused by all those cars leaving, which again causes traffic congestion and issues. We did work together with what we could do. We were able to get a second electronic signboard that we borrowed from Hanson to be able to put up to try to warn people coming down this way they should seek alternate routes. I talked with DPW to try to get additional detour signs, but we need specific detour signs talking about the fair. You can't just put a detour sign up because people won't know why they're going down there. And due to supply chain issues, we were unable to obtain any of those signs at this period of time. We can definitely get some for next year, but there's a big delay in getting that stuff. So that would have helped, but we weren't able to do that. But we did try. So what are we to do about it? First, I will reiterate that our officers and fair personnel did the best they could with the increased level of traffic. Route 58 is only 2 lanes and can only handle a certain number of vehicles. Parking vehicles takes time, and this causes traffic to back up onto Route 58. This year's volume could be an anomaly and may never repeat again. That said, we must at the very least look into other solutions that would help to mitigate the traffic problems in the future. Some areas that I think should be considered is a traffic plan established by a professional traffic engineer, similar to those in use by Gillette Stadium and Xfinity Center, to more effectively use the width of Route 58 to deal with traffic. More and better signage, I think we're working on that as well. And additional personnel, officers and civilian staff in the fair may be required to help to try to move vehicles on quicker. Tonight, there's a motion, you mentioned, Mr., that it's on there about creating this committee. I strongly recommend the Select Board vote to establish a working group consisting of the public safety chiefs, the DPW director, town administrator, to work with the fair owner to determine what to do next to mitigate this problem from continuing in the future. I do understand that no one likes to be stuck in traffic. I can tell you that I don't. I want to thank all the officers and fair personnel for handling the traffic, the overwhelming traffic, the best they could given the circumstances. This was a stressful time for all involved. I know I was there on all of those days. I observed it. I worked in the street with the officers to make sure we could move traffic by as quickly as we could. I recognized how frustrating it could be to be stuck in traffic, but I can reassure the board that everyone did everything they could with the situation at hand. Now it's time for us to keep that in mind and move forward with some type of better plan before we get to next fall and the fair starts again.
Thank you. Just before we move on, I noticed that Chief Weston joined us. Chief, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think the police chief did a great job of explaining it. We did staff our fire stations, realizing the emergencies that were going on in the traffic. But the police department did a good job of getting us through traffic when a call was put out. But again, getting call firefighters to the stations was definitely an issue we were concerned about and tried to mitigate the best we could.
Thank you. And Chief, I just want to point out, I know you said it, but just so the public is clear, that at no time was there a public safety problem. We had no issues getting our ambulances through or anything like that, correct?
No, we experienced none of that. Again, we control traffic. We can shut down traffic on both sides and bring emergency vehicles right through, down one lane and down the other. So there's never an issue with that.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything from the board before we move on to our next couple of proposals that are try to address this through on our agenda?
Well,
Ms. Bogart.
we all received an email from Savory Moore earlier today, and I thought he had some really interesting ideas, so if it's okay with you, I'd love to forward it to you. He's a resident.
Yes, yep, I know some more.
I would love to forward it to you because he had some interesting ideas
Certainly.
to take under consideration.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm forwarding it right now.
Thank you. Yes, I think the plan is to look at all ideas. I've read many of the ideas that are on Facebook, some viable, some not viable, but we certainly want to take a look at all ideas before we get to next fall. And hopefully we don't repeat the issue, but.
Mr. Belvin.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys and your officers, the chief for housing the fire station. I did notice that. So I got emails and messages from people. So it was very frustrating for them being in traffic and myself too. Luckily, know the back roads so you can get around some of it. But for the people that didn't know the back roads, they were stuck in it for a long time. So I understand. So
No, I appreciate that. We recognize it was very frustrating for people, and that's why we want to talk now and try to come up with a better plan for next year.
I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Hewens.
Yes, well, I wanted to thank you in particular and all the other emergency departments for what you did to make sure everything was okay during that time. My feeling is that you guys that are listed here, Chief Dufley, Chief Weston, Chief Ryan, Chief Walsh, Deputy Operations Maintenance Director John Woods, and the town administrator should just go ahead and form this working group. I don't think you need our approval. I think it's pretty clear it's needed. We may need our approval to fund a traffic engineer to help you, but I think, in my opinion, you guys should just go for it.
Thank you.
I guess my one question for this working group, anybody from King Richard's Fair going to be included in that group?
Yes, in my proposal would be that we work with the owner to develop a plan, because we're going to, there's going to be a cost to whatever we do, and my opinion, my humble opinion, I think the fair needs to absorb that cost. It's a business that's using the roadways to make money, and I think that there's got to be some mitigation of the cost through the fair, so I think they need to be involved in the process as we move it forward. I don't think that they need to control the process. I think the select board and this committee needs to control the process as to what we believe will be the best solution, but I think they need to be involved in it as far as being on board with it as we're creating it, talking it through, and then coming up with a way to pay for the cost.
So this working group that's listed, there would be the owner of King Richard's Fair in this as well?
That would be my intention, yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Hoffman, just so you're aware, that was actually on the original part of the agenda. Somewhere along the line it got left off.
Okay.
But representatives from King Richard's Fair were always intended to be part of the working group, and just somehow got left off the wording on the agenda. That's all. But I think clearly it's got to be people have got to come together. You folks and the public safety people, as well as the fair. It's all going to be
Yes.
people working together to help solve this problem. It's not going to be any one thing. And I agree. I don't think we necessarily need to have a vote to form this working group. I think you could probably just do it. Mr. LaFawn, do you have any concerns there as far as that
No,
goes?
I think the more important thing is the board's vote to establish a fund. I think that's the formality that I think needs to be dealt with tonight.
I agree. So before we move on to that agenda item, are there any other questions from the board about these particular concerns?
Not
Ms.
a
Boca?
question. I just appreciate having the formation of a working group on the agenda, because in the past, working groups have been formed that we haven't been informed about. So even if we don't have to vote
Yeah.
about it, whoever put it on the agenda, I appreciate it coming to us when it's beginning. So whoever's idea that was, thank you.
All right.
Just had one quick question for the chief. And so, do you think was there more people attending the fair than in past years? I know the traffic was more. So was
Oh,
it just that a lot of people came earlier, or
I
throughout
think
the day?
absolutely there was more people in the fair. I don't think the fair will tell us that, because they never do, but certainly there was a lot more people in the fair. I think it's, post-pandemic, everybody's coming back out of the woodwork and wants to get out and enjoy the fair. People were coming from New Hampshire, and like they always do, but just a great deal more cars coming in.
So the reason I'm asking, was it just that they weren't parking people fast enough and that was creating the backup? Again, anticipating the same attendance that they'd have pre-COVID.
Well, I can't speak to whether they were parking cars fast enough or not. I observed, I came in on all these days, and I stood in the parking lot and I watched, and I think that they did the best they could with the personnel and the parking lot that they have. It's a dirt parking lot. It's not a paved line parking lot. As you watch vehicles enter the parking lot, we've had different suggestions on bringing them in 2 lanes. All I can say is when people drive in, I don't know what happens, but they start to follow the people with the flags, then they do what they're going to do, and it's without insulting anybody, it's a much more difficult task than on its face it should appear to be, parking cars. And then they're parking the cars, people jumping out of the cars, trying to walk through it. It slows up when you're trying to park the cars, which is what causes the backup in the first place. I don't know. I don't have an answer on how we can make that faster. That's why I think we need to speak with the traffic engineer to look at this. That's what they do. I spoke with the traffic engineer that does Gillette and talked about Route 58 and what we have, and they definitely can create a coned traffic plan that will work, that will help us to mitigate it, that will keep a middle lane, so to speak, where you can stack traffic waiting to go into the fair and keep the outside lanes open much longer with some considerable expense to that. And I think that they can also look at the parking lot and see if they can make any suggestions of how to do that, park the cars quicker. I think at the end of the day, nobody, not us, not the residents of town, and not the people that run the fair, don't want to park people faster, because it's in everybody's benefit. We get the cars off the road, and the patrons are in the fair spending money. I think that that's the ultimate goal, and I think working together, we have to come up with a plan that makes that happen quicker. But yeah, the parking of the cars is a considerable part of the problem. You know what I mean? It's like I said, it's a deliberate and slow process for safety reasons, and like I said, I've watched a a lot of cars parking on that fair, and it just doesn't happen fast. People get confused. Again, I think we do need better signage within the parking lot and without, so the people who are coming in looking for handicap parking, not stopping and asking somebody a question, there's some way to direct them to that. So there's a number of different issues that I think this working group will be able to address and bring up and use, different people's ideas on how we resolve those. But yes, the parking lot is a part of it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? All right, so our next item is a discussion and possible vote to create an agency fund for the funding of a traffic engineer to address traffic and roadway concerns related to King Richard's Fair and authorize the police chief or his designee to expend the funds. Is there a motion?
I'd like to make that motion.
Can I get a second? I'll second it. Okay, discussion?
Before we create a fund, I think I would want to know how much it's going to cost to really, go out there and get bids to find out, all right, what engineering company would do this, and then come back to us and say, okay, this is how much it's going to cost, and then create the fund that way.
This is, I'm sorry, Mr. Bellman, this is not funding the fund, this is creating the fund.
No, I understand that, but you got to put money into
Well,
it.
King Richard's Fair will
No,
be funding the fund.
Yeah, King Richard's Fair will be funding this.
Yes.
But in order for us to be able to ask them to put money into the fund, we have to establish a fund and then go out and find out how much it's going to cost.
I'd rather find out how much it's going to cost first, because what if we do that and then find out, oh, well, they don't want to pay for that?
Well, I think
So I think
similar to other technical review style funds, we would get an amount up front from King Richard's Fair, whether it's 5,000 or, pick a number. Well, that's something we'd have to discuss with them. And as bills are incurred, then they replenish the fund. So at no time will the fund not have money. At no time will the town be expending funds. And where the funds are actually coming from a third party and not appropriated town funds, we can spend those without further appropriation, and we also don't need to go through a procurement process. Is we would be looking for technical services that are probably outside and probably don't cost enough to require any type of formal bid process anyway. It's possible that our regional planning agency can help with that. We don't know that yet. We've got to speak to King Richard's Fair and then find out what the best option is for getting traffic engineering services. But we need a place to collect the money and from which to expend the funds. Again, this will not be town funds.
And this is similar to how we're helping to fund the consultant for the fire chief under the Route 44 project. We are not paying for that, but in order for the project owner to put money into it, there has to be a fund. So that's just what we're doing here.
Right. And I don't want to speak for the chief, and certainly I'm sure he can address this, but I don't think we know how much it's going to cost. I don't think we know how much might have to go into this to create a plan.
Right.
But we need to get it started, I think, as quickly as possible so we can address these things sooner rather than later and have a plan ready for next year. And Chief, maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Certainly. So I have not looked into different bidding for this project, but I did talk to the engineer that does Gillette and ran it by him just to get his thoughts on it. And his thoughts are this would be a $5,000 to $10,000 plan after several months of discussion and approval from Mass DOT. That's just the plan. That's not implementing the plan. That's the cost of the plan. Again, that's not a quote. That's not much, it could change, but he believes it'll be somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 just to put together that plan. Also, on his advice, if we begin working on that plan early this spring, we will not be ready for next year's fair season if we're going to implement the plan. So I think there's a lot still to be talked about. That's why I want to have this working group. That's why I want to get moving on that. I believe the fair should have to foot the bill for it. We've got a good working relationship with them. We work with them every year to make this happen, but I think we're at a point in time where they're going to have to come up with some money to help alleviate this problem, or we may find ourselves in the same problem next year. But I think that having some way to do that is an important part of this, important component of this. I think you could wait on voting on creating the fund, but I think we have to get moving on the working group, and we have to get talking about getting somebody in here sooner than later, because it does, according to the engineer that I talked to, it takes a considerable amount of time to get this set up and get it through the approval process with Mass DOT, because Route 58 is a state highway. So.
Anything else? Mr.
I just
Hoffman?
had a quick question. So why do we need to create an agency fund versus just having them pay for any study?
There needs to be a place to put the money, so it can't just go into the general fund.
I'm saying, like, just have them, the fair, hire an engineer.
We don't want an engineer to be working for the fair. We want him or her to be working for us. We just want them to pay for it.
We want the chief and the working group to be able to hire whoever they want to hire.
Okay.
Not have the, I don't think it's right that the fair hires that
Right.
person.
Similar to the Route 44 project.
Right.
You know, again, we don't want consultants working for the proponent. We want consultants working for the town. So unless the town's writing the check, we can't be certain that you're getting the product that's in the best interest of the town.
Makes
That's
sense.
not to cast any aspersions on King Richard's Fair, but it's just bad form.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that for any proponent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just asking.
Well, I mean, ideally, that would eliminate some of
Right.
the middle steps, no question
Right.
about it, but.
Anything else from the board? Mr.
I
Baker?
I just think that, let's have the working group do some foundation work, find out the cost, then come back to us, and then create it then. At least we'll know how much we can say, okay, we'll create a fund that no more than this amount of money in that fund to be recouped. I mean, it's not just setting the fund up, because you got to turn around and have limitations, says if it goes below this amount of money, that it gets refurbished or supplemented, because we've done that with the redevelopment authority, with Route 44, to say, okay, once it gets to this amount, you need to give us some more. So,
Well, essentially, it's a matter of as the funds are expended, then they're reimbursed through the fund. It's,
And my understanding is
that's
that
the way it
the
works.
amount would come to us anyway, correct?
The amount?
The amount that would go into this fund.
Yes.
we
right,
don't
it comes
know.
to us first. So
Sorry?
we'd have to have we'd have to
Right.
determine what we think would be the
Correct.
appropriate
So
seed money.
but that issue will come back to this board. I think that's Mr. Belbin's concern, that he doesn't know how
No,
much.
if we create the fund, okay, that they can put money into, all right, it's not gonna come back to us, because now it's in the hands of the town administrator. It's not in our hands, because he's gonna turn around and
And the police chief.
the
Well-
police chief. Those are the ones that are gonna get the money.
Well, certainly
So-
they would be able to inform us.
Right.
I guess I'm missing what the problem is here. You know, I mean, similar to other technical review funds, there's seed money, there's an expenditure, there's a reimbursement to the
Yeah.
fund. This is.
That's what the planning board
Yeah,
does
no, this
every
is-
time an applicant
this
comes
is
to
no
them.
different. And I think the challenge here, too, is I think up front, it's going to be a little difficult to really, really narrow down the scope. Because, you know, the dynamics, I think the thought process is it's going to change as some of the thought process and study goes on. So I think it's just going to be difficult to say right up front, this is the scope, so you can go out and get a definitive price. And I don't think that's helpful in this particular case. And so I think seeking it upfront, you know, seed money up front, and doing as we just discussed, similar to the planning board and similar to our RDA and the town's agreement with regard to 44. I mean, obviously, this is on a much, much lower scale, but I think the method works well.
And I guess just speaking for myself, I understand Mr. Baldwin's point, and we could do it that way. But to me, I just think we need to get ahead of this as quickly as we can, and to give this working group as much time as they can, working with a traffic engineer to solve this problems. It seems like we have a lot of time, but we really don't have that much time, and who knows what changes we may have to make to try to accommodate this thing. I think this gives a lot more time for that group to work with King Richard's Fair and try to find solutions that work for everybody. Because the one thing we do know is that we don't want these issues again next year. And that's what I think the goal here is, to solve a problem, so the town people don't have to face this again next year. So I think we should authorize this fund and allow the group to do their job. Is there anything else on this? Seeing none, I think we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
It is 4-1, correct? All right.
Mr. Townsend, if I could just add one more thing before we close. I think no matter what plan we come up with, we have to recognize that the fair brings a considerable amount of traffic to Route 58, and no matter what plan we put in place, there is going to be traffic associated with the fair. There's no way we can change that. We can't widen it to 4 lanes. We can't put a flyover in. We have to live with the parameters we have. We just have to do the best we can to make use of them as efficiently, as effectively as possible. So that's the end goal from this working group, is to do that. I can't promise you that next year it's going to be no traffic. There's probably still going to be a considerable amount of traffic, but we're hopefully going to be able to deal with it in a better fashion for the residents.
And I don't think, I hope nobody thinks that there's not going to be any traffic. We just have to, if there's a way of dealing with it to help it a little bit, I think it's in everybody's best interest to do that.
Thank you very much.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Weston.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right. All right. Let's see. Moving on. Approval of the agreement between Lakeville and Carver for the Lakeville Animal Shelter. I hope everyone had a chance to read what was in the packet. Is there a motion on this?
I'll make a motion, we approve the agreement with the town of Lakeville and the animal shelter.
Yeah, between Lakeville and Carver, yes, I'll second that motion.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. All right, next is a vote to approve the seasonal population of Carver of 11,645. And this comes, Mr. LaFont, if I'm correct, this is for the benefit of the Alcohol Beverages Control Commission, correct?
That's correct, yes. They base their licenses on population, and the population they base it on is the seasonal population, because that would, if there is a seasonal population, that would tend to be higher. And again, you see this on the Cape. It's more relevant down there than it is in most of your communities throughout the state.
Okay. Do we know who determined the number of 11,645, just out of curiosity?
I think it's the census,
Is it the census?
I would presume.
You would ask that, wouldn't you? You would ask that, so.
Just curious, that's all. Okay. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the seasonal population of 11,645.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just have a question. How many licenses are available in Carver that go along with this? Do we know?
I'm not sure what our full complement
Yeah.
is of all alcoholic and beer and wine, but what you vote every year is based upon this number. So,
Okay.
as well as your marijuana licenses.
All right.
Actually, since you brought marijuana, we hear anything about the company in the south?
There's been no communication to my office.
Okay.
It's
in
not
any
really on the
fashion.
agenda, is it?
So,
No, it's really
Actually,
not
right.
on the agenda.
I know,
but no,
I just.
I
It's a
understand.
simple answer, though.
That's right. All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. All right. Next up is to set the date and time for annual town meeting. So, Carver town elections are Saturday, April 23rd. So normally we have our town meeting before elections. It was mentioned last year, and there was a lot of discussion, I think mostly positive, that when we set a date for town meeting, we also set a secondary date in case town meeting has to go to a second date, that both those dates are set in advance so people can plan on that. And I think based on discussions with the town clerk and the school, the proposed dates for town meeting were, just want to bring up my calendar here, Tuesday, April 12th, with a follow-up day, if needed, of Thursday, April 14th. And,
I make a motion that we set those dates for the annual town meeting.
all right. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
The agenda
What?
says set time also. It says date and time.
Okay. I believe our time normally is 7 p.m.,
Yes.
so I would recommend we continue with 7 p.m.
Any reason why it wasn't the 13th? Is there something going on that Wednesday?
I believe the discussion last year when we talked about setting a secondary time, and again, correct me if anyone remembers differently, but because sometimes town meeting runs late, the people wanted to give a day in between. They didn't want consecutive dates. They wanted some time in between. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was it.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr.
I think
Butler.
if I remember correctly through my memory, is that town meeting can actually change the date. They can decide what the date is.
They may be able to,
Through the rules of town meeting that we had.
and they probably, I think you're correct. I think the thought was just to give people something to plan on rather than getting to town meeting and having it be, midnight and trying to come up with a,
It's also
A date.
important to make sure that we book the venue.
that's right.
That's pretty critical.
That's right, and let everybody involved, the town clerk, town council, everyone have a date so they can plan it on their calendars. Any further discussion? Hearing none. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. All right. Next up on our agenda is a discussion of the budget process. I think, Ms. Hewens, this is something you had asked for?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Townsend.
Thank you.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the jeopardy I think that this board is putting the town in terms of a budget process. Our bylaws read that the town administrator must prepare the budget. And no one else can do that. The finance committee can't do it. The select board can't do it. The finance director can't do it. The school business administrator can't do it. We have a new finance director and a new school business administrator that haven't been through even one budget process with us yet. Typically those positions, the people in those positions, go through the budget process with the TA who prepares the budget. And while we have some extremely competent department heads, they can't be responsible for integrating their budgets into the larger picture. That's not their job. Their job is to ask for what their department needs, and it's the town administrator's job, along with these other positions, the finance director and school business administrator, to make that work for everyone. One of my concerns is that we are not going to get someone to be an interim TA for us between December 31st and the end of the fiscal year. I'm not sure, if I were an interim TA, I'd want to come here. Can't speak for them. But my other concern is that anyone that we would get during that period of time, I'm very concerned that that person would just kind of be babysitting. And at this juncture in time, with all the projects we have going on, the new people we have, the people that have left, we need someone who really understands what's going on here. We don't need someone just to hold our hand. We need someone to really make this work. Because the budget isn't just about money. It's about our departments. It's about our residents. It's about our employees. And just a couple of things I wanted to point out that I don't know if people are aware of, that the town is actually the largest employer in town. If we don't get a budget by the end of the fiscal year, there's going to be a lot of people hurting. And one of the things I just found out recently was that legally there's a date when professional teachers, full-time licensed teachers, need to be given notice if they're going to be let go, and that's April 15th. The date for paraprofessionals is June 15th. So if we don't have a budget in place by that time, and if those people were given notice, they would be eligible for unemployment. So that would mean a six-figure number that we could never get back. So I'm just very concerned about this whole process, and I want people to realize that we're not just talking about money. It's not something just anybody can do. It needs to be someone who knows what they're doing, understands Carver, because we are a very different town from any other town, and someone who actually cares about the people who live here, the residents. as well as the employees.
All right. Thank you. Anything from the board?
I
Mr.
just,
Belvin?
all that, Sarah, all that talk that you just did, I mean, the budget process for every town is the same way. And if we get whether it be a town administrator or intern town administrator or whatnot, they're going to have the training, knowledge, and experience to go through that process. It's not like recreating the wheel. It's something that happens all the time. And that's it. And
We are very different from any other town, Mr. Belvin.
every town
Certain things are
has the
similar.
same. Sarah, please. Every town has a school system. They have a police station, a fire station, a DPW, a town hall, a library, a council on aging. All right, they have that. They know the finances that they can turn around and say, okay, this is the money that's coming in. This is the money that's going on, because we have a finance director who's extremely talented, okay, with our town now. We can turn around and get somebody in here that I'm sure can do that job, okay? But I understand what you're trying to do and the innuendos that you're making there. I understand that, but I don't think that's productive for us to move forward. I think what we should have done is already put out there, but it didn't happen. So we're looking to the future. We need to turn around and focus in on the future.
Oh, I am focusing on the future. The future is now. It's this budget season. And I'm not suggesting anything by innuendo. These are facts, Bob. This is how it works. In our town, there may be some similarities with other towns, but there is no town like Carver. We operate, in many respects, very different from the other towns. I don't know of a town that has some of the projects coming into it that we have right now, or some of the problems, some of the issues. We don't have a planner. We don't have an assessor. We have as good as she is, we have a finance director who hasn't been through Carver's budget process, and our new school business administrator. People are worried. These people are worried. This is not just me speaking. And it's not an innuendo. These are facts.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, so a fact is, we used to have elected people that worked within this town, lived in this town. They were elected in this town for those positions. And once we changed them from elected to appointed, now we have an issue. So if you really want to go back in the past to say, hey, should we have went from elected to appointed? Well, this is an issue that we have. Had we had elected officials, we wouldn't be in this situation. Had we went ahead and when I asked to start early on to go through the process, okay, we should have done that. And you didn't do that as the chairperson, okay? And that was your decision to make, to turn around and do it. So we're in a position now, we have to move on, okay? It's gonna happen, we've gotta go through the budget process, no problem. We have some very talented people in our town for management, for department heads, okay? They can work with anybody that walks through this door, all right, to take over as an interim town administrator or town administrator. They've already seen that we can do that in the past. We can do that in the future. We're going to do it.
We did that in the past because Mr. LaFawn had been here for 17 years, Mr. Belvin.
And he
can
left.
I just, excuse me, can I just say something about taking elected people out of those positions, elected townspeople? The reason we did that in the past, and I don't know how you were, how much you were involved or not in the past, but the reason that those positions got taken out of being elected is to take the politics out of it. We can't have, that's why we have a town administrator. That's why we hired someone in 1996 to stop it being all politics all the time. And this department got this much money because they were the guy's son or best friend, or they played golf together. That's how it used to be, and that's not what we need now.
Could I just say, first of all, this is extremely uncomfortable for me, as you can understand.
I'm sorry.
I understand that you have to have this conversation, but based upon the timeline you have set, the town administrator, according to the bylaw, has to submit a budget to the finance committee by January 26th. So that's
Thank you for that.
that's where we're looking at right now. So we have established dates in anticipation of the board's.
So, Mr. LaFawn, based on that, can you tell me where we are right now in the budget process?
Well, the budgets are due to my office, the finance office, by December 3rd, which is the same date as the capital outlay articles, requests are due to my office. We're scheduling budget meetings internally, as we would every year with the finance staff, with department heads, the week of the 16th. I'm sorry, if you're in the right month, it usually helps. The week of the 14th. So that gives us a week to put the package together, all the requests. Middle week, the 14th and 15th. 16th, we're looking to do our internal budget conversations to the best we can to get through those. And same with capital. That's kind of a dual process internally. And the question becomes, we don't know how long it takes from that point to get everybody together, make the numbers work, anticipate all the different requests. As you know, we have a couple unique things this year. We're going to have to deal with the police contract. We also have some other, as always, there's other things every year. So we have from that period of time until January 26th to get a budget submitted to the Finance Committee to meet the timeline that you have set. So that's based upon the town's bylaw and based upon the town's, the board's time frame, which is a similar time frame in past years for Carver.
Okay. Is there anything else?
I have a question.
Mr. Hoffman?
So this budget, according to the bylaw, has to be submitted to the FinCom by January 26th, correct?
Well, so it's 75 days before town meeting.
Okay.
So
So one of the things that's bothered me during this whole process is that the contract agreed upon for the interim town administrator ended December 31st. All I've heard is we can't make changes. This is budget season. I wasn't part of that contract for the ITA. Why was it ever expired on December 31st?
And just for the record, I wasn't part of that negotiation either. I voted for the contract, but I was not part of the negotiation.
Right, but negotiated and or agreed. I mean, I just don't understand that because that's a lot of pressure right now that we're being thrown at.
Well, I guess, I mean, again, you guys can answer better than I, but my feeling is it is what it is, regardless of how it got there. I think it was an even 18 months. I don't know. And maybe
Well, there wasn't too much forethought brought before that you know it's a budget season, so even if you didn't negotiate it or whoever,
Well, I think,
just to
Mr.
approve
Hoffman,
it.
there was forethought given to the contract. I think the thought was that we would allow plenty of time for the discussions to take place, whether we were going to hire a new town administrator or can offer an extension to the interim town administrator. I think I can only speak for myself and can't speak for Mr. Belbin, but I think the thought was that, everybody knew when the contract was expiring, so we'd set a date in advance of that so we could have someone in place. It didn't happen for a number of reasons, but I think everybody knew when the contract was expiring. There's no surprise there.
Right. Oh, I agree.
I can only speak for myself.
And we
Mr.
have
Belbin.
tried on many occasions to make this work. And now it's, almost too late.
Mr. Belbin.
So, if my recollection is correct, the time frame for this contract became the issue of our bylaws doesn't say how long a town assistant ITA is going to be contracted for. All right, and going back and forth is, do we want it for 6 months or do we want it a little bit, because we needed somebody in. All right, so we do a 6 month? Do we do a 1 year? I mean, if we do a 2 year, then people are going to get upset, say, well, why don't you just hire him as a regular one and screw the bylaws? Excuse my language, but that's where we turn around and say, well, where's a happy medium in between that we can get somebody in to cover us, all right, to get through town meeting and to get us through the rest of the year. All right, so that's at least 6 to 8 months, all right? And then we got to go through the process again of hiring a town administrator and looking at it as another probably 6 to 8 months to do that.
So that's where we came up with it, if I remember correctly. It was just along that time frame. But it is what it is, and that's why I want to start earlier. But we're in the position we are now. We need to move forward to that and try to make it as quick as possible that we can get something going.
Sorry, Bob, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think, as I remember, there were a couple of other things that played into that. First of all, there were a number of proposals, I think, for the length of the interim town administrator contract. As I recall, and Sarah, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was proposals anywhere from as short as 12 months to as long as 3 years. I think there was a proposal for 3 years. So that 18 months, sort of a compromise. I think the other thing was, please remember, we were heading into a pandemic at the time we brought Mr. LaFond in. And that's something that, as far as I know, the town had never done before. Nobody knew where that was going to go. So I think where in an everyday, if it was an everyday situation, we might have opted for a shorter contract. But I think because we had the pandemic coming, and nobody knew what was going to happen there, that we wanted somebody for a little longer period of time. And again, those are just, we're going back in time now, and that's the best I can recollect. I didn't do any research prior to this meeting, so I could be wrong here, but I know those were my thoughts going into it, that we had, the pandemic was facing us. We didn't know where that was going to go. We didn't know what that was going to do to budgets, and I think we felt like we needed somebody for a little longer period of time than perhaps we might have hired an interim otherwise. Those are just my thoughts anyway.
No, it was a big issue. I agree.
So,
Okay, no, again, I was just wanted to know and express my concern about that December 31st is budget season, no matter what's going on. And that for a contract to end at that time, just, obviously hindsight's 20/20, but.
well, but again, if you're right, hindsight's always 20/20, and we can look back now as a board and say, should we have started the process earlier? Well, maybe, but I think we all anticipated that we had enough time in there that we'd have somebody in place by December 31st. Obviously, that doesn't appear to be the case, and we're going to have to deal with it. That's why people elect us, and that's what we'll do. So that's just where we're at. Is there any other discussion about that line item, about the budget process? All right. Seeing none. Our next item is...
Mr. Chairman, just so you know,
Mr. LaFond.
you can rest assured that we are diligently pursuing the budget process. Fear
Thank
not.
you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr.
I really,
Mr. Bellman.
thank you very much for saying that. I appreciate it. I know you will work tirelessly
Absolutely.
up until the last day that you have to work here, okay? So I want to make sure that I appreciate it very much.
No, and you've made that clear, Bob. I appreciate
Okay.
that. Yes.
I think we all do. We appreciate that.
Okay. All right, moving forward. We have discussion and possible vote on a number of items relating to the interim town administrator and that search. But one of those items is to interview new applicants and vote on the members of the town administrator screening committee. That's the last item of our bullet points, but I noticed that we have a number of people out in the audience that may wish to be interviewed, and I wonder if the board would consider moving that item to the top so we could let these people
Yes.
talk to us.
Definitely.
I agree.
Any issue
Yes.
there? All right. Thank you. Are there any applicants for the town administrator screening committee that would like to say a few words to the board? All right, Ms. Blanchard, Mr. Tracy, and I'll defer to whichever one of you would like to go first. Mr. Tracy,
Okay.
if you would just introduce yourself for the folks at home. And
My name is Kevin Tracy.
Kevin,
Chairman-
speak into the mic.
Yep,
Sorry.
I'll do my best.
Thank you.
Currently Chair of the North Carver Water District. I also sit on Historic District Commission, Community Preservation Committee. Lifelong resident in this town, longtime business owner and farmer. Not quite sure what else you guys might want to know from me. I mean, you've all known me for a while, so if anybody had any questions, I'm here to answer.
Okay. Other questions from the board?
Well, I guess for consistency's sake, if I recall, the question I asked everyone the first time around, I don't have the exact wording, was how deep into an applicant's past would you go to vet if they're a good candidate or not?
Well, from my opinion, future performance is often determined by past experiences. I can tell you that, I'm a better farmer now than I was years ago. You're going to need to, if you're looking for somebody who's going to be a quality individual, you really kind of need to dig into their past and interview people that have worked with them and see if you can get a good sense of who they are as an individual. I think that's pretty standard operating procedure for when you're going to hire anybody. Any kind of executive needs to be fully vetted, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Bell?
Thank you very much for applying. I appreciate it. I just want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
He's been ultimate professional working with the water district and a businessman in this town, so thank you.
You're welcome. And I have no question for you, Kevin, but I do appreciate you stepping up and
I know you do.
applying.
I'm sitting in a room full of volunteers.
Just so we're clear for the board, are you applying for the at-large position or the business community rep?
Business community
Okay,
rep.
thank you. Ms. Ewens, Mr. Hoffman, do either of you have anything for Mr. Tracy?
Well, I obviously want to thank you too, Mr. Tracy. Really appreciate everything you've done for the town.
You're welcome.
I want to thank Kevin as well, and that was my question, was which position he was. So you stole it. But thank you very much for coming forward.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
All right. Ms. Blanchard?
I am Ellen Blanchard. I live at 238 Main Street, and I have been a member of the, as a resident of the town of Carver for 30 years. This is my hometown now. I didn't grow up here, but this is my hometown. And I have worked for the town. I have worked in the assessing office. I have worked in many assessing offices, both prior to working here full-time and since I've retired. I have worked with many town administrators. I know what works. I know what doesn't. And I am very interested in seeing that the town moves forward in a united plan to have the best for this town.
All right. Thank you. Questions on the board? Ms. Ewens?
So, Mrs. Blanchard, are you running for the at-large position? Applying for the at-large
Yes.
position? Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for applying. We really appreciate it.
Well, I feel very strongly about this committee, and I'm concerned for the town, so that's why I'm here. And you.
Anyone else?
Again, thank you very much for applying. I appreciate it, and all your years of service here at the town.
Thank you, Mr. Belbin.
I want to thank you as well for stepping forward for.
Thank you.
I appreciate
Myself
that.
as well, Alan. I appreciate everything you've done for the town of Carver.
Well, thank you. And I'm still working here, even though, as chairman of the Board of Assessors, I'm doing work for the town in the office because it needs to be done. And I'm getting a lot of support. And I appreciate that because the work needs to be done. I'm not invoicing anybody. I'm not asking for more pay. I get a stipend of $750 a year to do this. So, and it's kind of fun to be back here for a while. But I also agree with vetting, that you need, You didn't ask me last time either.
Yes, oh, I asked everybody last
I
time.
don't
That same question, I was so good,
I
'cause I
just
remember.
don't remember that.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Okay, well, so, so how far, I
Yes.
swear I did it, I didn't miss anyone, but, okay, in any case,
Yes.
how far back would you look in an applicant's history in order to vet a candidate?
Well, it's interesting because you want to see how that person has grown from where they started and, have they blossomed? Have they improved? Have they done good things? Are there any negatives? But the negatives usually are on, personalities and stuff like that. So, and that's my experience. And I have also hired many people, not just here in Carver, but in other towns. And since I retired, I've been called as a consultant for hiring. And it's very important to know who the person is, what they bring to the table, and what they are going to offer. And knowing where they've been is very important.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else on the board? All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
Ms.
very much.
Blanchard.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else out in the audience that, sir?
Mr. Cole.
My name's Walter Cole. I was on the last committee. I stepped away a little bit because of time constraints, and now that things have freed up, I would like to continue what I had started in looking for a town administrator. I've been here in town since 1980. I've had a lot of things see and go by the way, and I'd like to participate in some of that now that I'm able to.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
All right, I'm not sure, were you here for interviews for the first time? In any case, just to
He was not.
just to double check. How far back into an applicant's history would you go in order to fully vet someone for the position?
As deep as we have to go, I do believe, to find truly not just how educated the man is, but what's his background. How's he gonna work with you? How's he gonna work with this one? That's all important when you're gonna work with people. They have to, and you're not gonna get a person that can get along with everybody, but you have to try to do the best you can to find the right person.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I just want to thank you for serving on the last committee and also for wanting to serve on this committee as well. So thank you. Takes a lot of time and effort, so.
Thank you.
And I wanted to thank you also, Mr. Cole, for all the other things you do in town as well.
Well, thank you very much.
As did I. Thank you very much for all you do. We appreciate it. All right, is there anyone else in the audience that would like to be interviewed? All right, so at this time, we have a couple of votes to make. First of all, there's an item on the agenda to convert the business community representative to an at-large member. The reason that's there was at the time we made the agenda, we didn't think we were going to have any business community representatives. We now have two, so I don't think that agenda item is necessary anymore.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to ask Mr. Cole, are you here as member at large?
He was the,
Well, I was as the business rep, so
But are you here now as the member at large?
whatever one works.
Okay. Okay.
Well, I think you wanted to be back as the business,
that
from
was
what
my,
the email that I saw.
Well,
Yeah, that's-
I don't want to tell him what he wants to do.
Right,
Wh-
yeah.
Which would you prefer, Mr. Cole?
I prefer probably the business rep that we work.
okay. So with the board's permission, I'll take that agenda item off, because I don't think it's necessary anymore. So with that, we have two votes to make. A vote on the three at-large members, and then the vote for the business community representative. The last time we, Mr. Bell.
Yeah, are any of the three prior at-large, did they want to be on the
Yes,
committee?
they all they all indicated that they wanted to continue, all three. So Adam Holmes, Pat Mahar, and Mary Ross all indicated that they wanted to continue. So we have 5 applicants, to the best of my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, Shelby, but the other 2 applicants were Ellen Blanchard and John Ouellette, right? There were no others for the at-large position? Right.
Okay.
And then we have 2 applicants for the business community representative, Kevin
Okay.
Tracy and Walter Cole. So the way we did it last time for the at-large members, I thought that worked pretty well, was we went around the room and we gave a ranking to our 3 choices. We have a 3 for our number 1 choice, a 2 for our second choice, and a 1 for our third choice. And then at the end, we added up the numbers, and the 3 that got the highest number were our 3 choices. I thought that worked pretty well, so I think we should probably do that again. And then for the business community rep, we can just simply have a vote, because there's only two folks. So if there's no further discussion from the board, we can vote on our at-large members. So, Mr. Hoffman, why don't we start with you, and we'll go around the room.
Can you state all those, so it was,
Sure. So your top choice would be a 3.
no, I mean the,
The 5 members?
right.
Yeah, we have Adam Holmes, Pat Mahar, Mary Ross, Ellen Blanchard, and John Ouellette. Those are the 5 members for the at-large.
And the scoring is the one we want most gets 3?
3, 2, 1. And
Okay.
the 3, Shelby will add them up, and the 3 members with the highest total score will be the at-large members.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Hoffman, would you like to lead us off?
Okay. In my order from 3, 2, 1 would be Adam Holmes, Mary Ross, and Pat Mahar.
So Adam Holmes with a 3, Mary Ross with a 2,
Correct.
and Pat Mahar with a 1?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Ms. Ewens?
My votes would be Pat Mahar gets 3, Mary Ross gets 2, and Ellen Blanchard gets 1.
All right. My vote would be Pat Mahar with 3, Mary Ross with 2, and Ellen Blanchard with 1. Mr. Belvin?
Adam Holmes would be number 3. John Ouellette would be number 2. And Ellen Blanchard would be a 1.
All right. And Ms.
Okay.
Bogart?
I would, Ellen Blanchard would be a 3, Mary Ross would be a 2, and John Ouellette would be a 1.
All right. We'll give Shelby a minute to add those up.
A lot of pressure on Shelby.
All right, so Mary Ross is the highest with an 8.
I'm sorry, Shelby, could you just speak into the microphone? Thank you.
Mary Ross is the highest with an 8. Patrick Mahar is the second with 7. And then we have a tie with Adam Holmes and Ellen Blanchard as 6.
Okay. All right, so I think what we'll do is we'll go around the room, and we can vote for one or the other, and we'll have a tiebreaker. So we have a choice between Adam Holmes and Ellen Blanchard. Mr. Hoffman?
I choose Adam Holmes.
Ms. Ewens?
I'd like to see Ellen Blanchard on the committee.
I would also vote for Ellen Blanchard.
And Adam Holmes.
Vote for Ellen Blanchard.
All right,
Ellen.
so it's Ellen 3-2, correct?
Yep.
All right, so our at-large members of the screening committee are Mary Ross, Pat Mahar, and Ellen Blanchard. And I would just like to thank everybody for applying. We certainly appreciate it. And I guess that's all I would have to say. Thank you. And, all right. Moving on, we have our business community representatives, Kevin Tracy and Walter Cole. And it's simply one or the other. So I think we started with Mr. Hoffman last time. Ms. Bogart, maybe this time we'll start with you and work our way around.
I would vote for Kevin Tracy.
Mr. Belvin?
Walter Cole.
I also vote for Walter Cole.
I also vote for Walter, but I have to say that both of them are wonderful people, and it's just that Walter's done this before. So.
And I agree. I agree that I think, I wish I could have found a way to vote for both of them. But Mr. Hoffman.
Yep, I feel the same way with Walter, but I wish we could put both of you on.
Yeah,
All right.
I was hoping we could.
All right, so Walter Cole is our business community representative. So once again, our at-large members of the screening committee are Mary Ross, Pat Mahar, and Ellen Blanchard, and our business community representative is Walter Cole. And again, thank you all for applying. We certainly appreciate it.
So
Thank you.
does Ellen have to get sworn in since she's the only one who is new to a committee?
Yes.
Make sure you go to Kara to get sworn in.
I'm sure Ellen knows that.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Ms. Hoffman.
with the screening committee, as it looks like Jen Pratt is still going to be voted she was voted on the 8th. Bruce Mackey was voted on the 8th for the planning board, and Tom Walsh and Craig Weston voted on the 2nd. But the finance committee has not voted.
Yes,
Yeah,
they
I
did. They voted
think-
tonight.
I think they voted tonight, but that was not on our agenda this evening because we didn't know the finance committee was going to have a vote. So on at an upcoming meeting, we'll be reviewing these. But I think, again, these are voted by those committees, not by us.
But the way that we left it at the last meeting was that we would be able to confirm or not confirm the votes.
Well, we can tell you what the email was, because Mark and I and Elaine got an email from the chair, Alan Germain, this evening. It was before this meeting.
We did, but again, confirming or not confirming those folks is not on this
Right.
agenda.
Okay.
So,
You're right. No, you're right.
so that's, if we had known the finance committee was going to hold that meeting, I don't think we were aware of it before we made up the agenda. So on an upcoming meeting, we'll have that on here. All right, so now we'll go back to the top and a discussion and possible vote on various things that have to do with the town administrator. So the first is the executive consultant. And I wanted to make sure this was on the agenda because I just want to make the board and the town aware that we do have an executive consultant under contract, Mr. Milanowski. We are paying him right now. And, I'm not suggesting that we bring Mr. Milanowski back. I'm not suggesting anything like that. But I would, again, I think I have a fiduciary responsibility to point out to the board that this man is under contract. And there could be something that comes up that he might be able to advise us on without us having to go out. We may very possibly not have, a town administrator in that office by December 31st. And I think I would like to see the board. I would ask the board to authorize myself working with Ms. Weston if something comes up that we need his advice on, that we contact him. I actually don't think we need the permission of the board. He's under contract, but I would like to see a vote of the board to the extent that we utilize the services of the executive consultant. So it's open to discussion.
I have a question. So once that contract was signed, what was
The executive consultant contract?
Yes, the executive consultant, or however that process was.
Yeah.
What was something in place to have him been used? Did it have to be a vote, or if someone, whether it was the interim town administrator or any other department, could they go to him? Was there a procedure, I guess, is what
I think the procedure is to go through the town administrator. I think the procedure was always if we needed his services in some way to go through the town administrator.
No.
But yeah.
No. Not that with that is that he was contracted with the Board of Selectmen. If the town administrator needed something, all right, extra help or whatnot, the town administrator would come to us, and we would turn around and direct the executive
Right, but the initial contact would be through the town administrator. But in this case, there won't be a town administrator, or there could be an interim who's only here on a part-time basis. Again, I'm not talking about bringing him back, but I think something could come up in the course of business that we may need to, make a phone call and seek his advice on. And if we have to wait for a 2-week period to come back to this board, well, that's a delay that might be a problem. We just can't anticipate what's going to come up. So, again, I'll leave it up to the board. We're paying the man. He's under contract. And, I think we might need his service.
In my opinion, is that it needs to be directed through us, and the scope of what is going to be done needs to be clear of what the scope is to be done.
But we can't anticipate what might come up. This is a little different circumstance than when we first entered into this contract. We anticipated having a town administrator that would have that conversation. We don't know what's going to come up. So,
but we have Mr. LaFont here.
Until
now.
December 31st.
Until December 31st.
I
I'm not
understand
talking
that.
about utilizing him now.
I don't want to step on Rick's toes at all during this time.
Right.
Okay? But even after that time, it's the point of saying, we need to know what the scope is going to be done.
No.
And how it's going to be done, and if it's going to be done. So, I mean, by just giving a blanket, here you go, that you can turn around and do or say whatever you want, go right ahead. It's the fact that I think that it needs to be directed by the whole board.
Well,
Anything that's done and what the scope is, if it's going to be utilized.
So, Mr. Chair, are you asking, for example, that if our assistant TA needs help or has a question of some kind and our current ITA is not here, that she could make a phone call?
That's exactly, what I'm saying is something could come up on a Thursday, okay? The Thursday after our meeting. And we might need an answer to something that we just don't know. And I would like the board's permission to be able to, with the assistant town administrator, to reach out to the executive consultant and say, hey, we have a question about this. And the situation could easily come up where we don't have a week and a half to wait to come back to this board to ask permission to reach out to the executive consultants. And I think it's a little bit short-sighted if we don't try to make use of his services where we can. Again, no one's asking for permission to bring him back and put him in the town administrator's office. All we're looking to do is reach out and get the answer to a question if we need an answer. And let's face it, he has knowledge that not everybody else has. So I'll leave it up to the board where they want to go with that. But I think it's an important point to make that this man is under contract right now to the town of Carver.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I think this time would be better spent trying to get an interim town administrator.
Yeah.
When we had that meeting at the high school, I believe that we left it at Miss Weston was going to come back at the next meeting with progress on having reached out to ITA firms, and
No, that's not the way we left it. Because I think we should solve one thing at a time. So is there a motion from the board to authorize me to work with Ms. Weston to contact the executive consultant if need be? If there's no motion, then there's no motion and we'll move on.
I don't understand why we need a motion. He has a contract. I'm not sure if he's been used in the past by anybody in the past,
To the best of my knowledge, he hasn't.
but
Mr. LaFawn, you could probably speak better to that than I could, but to the best of my knowledge, he hasn't.
I've spoken
has
to
not.
Mike
No.
once or twice, but not seeking his advice.
Okay.
so I guess I'm confused as why we would have to even have a motion. He has a contract with the town as an executive consultant. If for some reason we don't have an interim town administrator in place and the assistant town administrator has a question, she should be able to do that. I mean, that's part of the contract. I mean, I don't understand why, unless I'm missing something.
Well, as I think it's been made clear from Mr. Belbin's previous, I mean, I think it would be good to have the board, for lack of a better term, on board with utilizing his services. That's my thought.
So I guess so the board that gave him the contract utilize, approve that.
It was a little, the
I know
services
there's
under
more
that
to it, but-
contract are a little ambiguous, and I think it would be good for the, again, I think it would be good for the board to buy into that.
May
Yes.
have a solution here. How about we go into, have a meeting with the executive consultant brought in through executive session to discuss the contract, to spell out, because that's what I think the issue is, what services are the executive consultant supposed to do for the town for it? Like I said, before I turn around and say yes, no, I want a scope of what.
I don't think we can
gonna
know.
be
We
directed.
can't know what questions are going to come up, and Mr. LaFond, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but you don't know what's going to come up on the day-to-day basis. Am I correct? And that's why I can't spell out the scope of what he will do, because we don't know. We don't know what questions are going to come up.
The volume is intense, and you don't end up the day the way you thought you were going to start the day. So it's constant and it's varied, and you do not know from hour to hour, never mind from day to day, what's going to be coming up.
I don't want to bog us down in this. This is I think we all. I don't want to go round and round here. So either there's a motion or there's no motion.
Can we bring it up in the next meeting, please? That we have.
That's the feeling of the board.
Okay, that way we can think about it a little bit more.
Well, it was on the last agenda as well, so we've had time to think about it. But
Well, I didn't.
well, okay. Is there any motion from the board? Hearing none.
Okay.
We will move along. So, update on subcommittee for interim town administrator contract extension. Ms. Hewens and
Yeah, Mrs. Bogart, maybe you'd like to tell the people what happened since I wasn't there. Maybe into the mic.
I don't appreciate the curtness, Sarah, okay?
Well, I sorry you don't like my personality. I can't help it.
I saw before, the day before the meeting, that when I was going to meet with Sarah and Rick, that it was posted as an executive session. And when we talked about it here, I thought it was going to be a more casual conversation. I was not under the impression that it was an executive session with minutes and things to be taken. I didn't think that went that deep onto the agenda of the prior meeting. It just didn't seem that official at our meeting, and maybe I misinterpreted, but I wasn't comfortable going into an executive session meeting based on what the agenda had said to the prior meeting. So I ended up just speaking to Mr. LaFond one-on-one.
Okay. Well, I think...
And if I could just add to that, before I left, I did explain that because the point of the discussion was to discuss with Mr. LaFond whether or not he would even consider extending his contract, even though we're doing the search, that in itself was a form of negotiation. We weren't talking money or anything, so it had to be an executive session.
But if he had agreed to extend his contract, then you would have had to discuss money. So yes, it would have had to be...
Well, we would have brought that back to the board.
Yeah.
And that's what I told Mrs. Bogart, that we weren't there at that particular moment to discuss money. It was a discussion of an extension of the contract, which is a form of negotiation. And she didn't feel comfortable with me there, so I left.
If I could just explain something procedural. If a subcommittee is authorized by an appropriate body to do any kind of work, that as a official representative of that body, that meeting has to be posted. So, and I know we had that conversation, Jen, and I know there's been a lot of confusion. A few years ago, I didn't know that myself, but it's clear in the last few years, not just in Carver but elsewhere, that if you're an authorized subcommittee of a board or committee, then the meeting, it does have to be posted. Doesn't mean the public is invited necessarily, but it does have to be posted.
And do either of you want to tell us what was discussed at that meeting, or no?
No extension was agreed upon.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't.
All right, so there's nothing new to report out of that,
Nothing new to report, I think that's.
out of that meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so the next item is discussion and possible vote on an interim town administrator. So before we have any discussions, are there any motions that somebody would like to make?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to extend Mr. LaFawn's contract for 6 months and to continue the search for a permanent town administrator.
So the discussion to extend his contract as interim town administrator?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a second on that? I mean, I'll second it for discussion, but I think we've been down this road
Okay.
a few times.
Well, I just wanted to say, try to say this as nicely as I can. I feel, Mrs. Bogart, that you promised this board at our October 19th meeting that you would be willing to extend his contract if we continued the search. And it seems that you've gone back on that. And I just think that it's very important for us to keep our word as board members.
I'm not getting into a tit for tat. You go back and you watch that meeting. She asked for the 6-month extension. I asked, is a search involved with that? You declined. You said it wasn't part of the motion. I
That's
didn't promise the board anything.
Well, yes, you did, because on the next page, you asked if Mr. LaFawn is open to staying, even knowing there's an active and open search. And Mr. LaFawn didn't respond directly. He talked about the organization needing stability. And so, to my mind, that was you saying, you did originally say you were amenable if the search continues. So now the search is continued. We've acted on that in good faith. We've continued the search. And so it seems to me that what we should be doing now is extending his contract. I think it's just the right thing to do, especially given all the budget situation. We're going to be in a bad way.
I had a good discussion with Mr. LaFond. I believe from my point, the 2 hours we spent discussing, we were pretty thorough.
Okay, all right. Well, is there any need to discuss this further?
No.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to extend Mr. LaFawn's contract for 6 months while we continue with the screening committee and the town administrator search. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. It fails.
I'm sorry, Rick.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
that's fine.
Shouldn't have to do this.
So moving on. So I think the first thing we need to decide, so we can have Ms. Weston place our ad as soon as she possibly can, is to decide whether we want to look and to advertise for a full-time or a part-time interim town administrator. It's my opinion that we probably should look for a part-time town administrator. I don't think we want someone who's going to do any major changes in town hall. We're just looking for someone to carry on, I think, while we help us get ready for town meeting and handle the day-to-day things that come up in the town administrator's office. And but we need to get an ad placed. We need to authorize Ms. Weston to do that as quickly as possible. So what are the thoughts of the board?
And how long would the ITA be hired for?
Well, I mean, I think that would depend. I would say up to 6 months. I don't think we want to lock ourselves into a time period because, we have the screening committee. They have a charge, but that doesn't mean they couldn't find someone sooner. We don't know what their search is gonna find. They could find someone who's ready to take the office on, pick a date, April 1st, May 1st, who knows? So I wouldn't want to lock ourselves into, and certainly we can discuss it, but I don't think we should lock ourselves into a particular time period. I would prefer to say up to rather than lock ourselves in, but that's, we can discuss that certainly. Mr. Belvin.
Are you looking for a motion to search for a interim town administrator for a indefinite term to extend? My feeling is that if you're looking for a time frame, my time frame will be up until the hiring of a new town administrator.
Yes, I think that
would be if I made a motion, my motion would be that
I think that would
that
be
would be
an
the time frame.
excellent time. I think we need to specify in the motion, though, whether it's a full-time or a part-time interim town administrator, because some people might reply to an advertisement for one, but might not advertise.
I would like that open, because I'd like to talk to the people that apply of what they are looking for. Because some people, because of their retirement status, they can only work for so many hours per year, and we need to make sure that we don't lock them into something.
I understand, but I think you are going to limit the number of applicants you're going to get that way. I think you have to specify what you want in order for people to apply. I think if you leave it open, you're going to get less applicants for a position.
Well, which one are we going to get more from?
Well, I think it depends on what you need and payroll. And I just, my personal feeling is if you're just looking for someone to maintain and help get ready for town meeting, that you don't necessarily need someone full-time in that role. But again, members of the board may feel differently. But we need to do something tonight so we can authorize Ms. Weston to place that ad. So,
All right, I'll make a motion. I make a motion that we put out an ad for a part-time intern town administrator, up to the time that we get a contract signed with a new town administrator.
we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second the discussion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion.
I guess my question is the full-time versus part-time. So hopefully we can get somebody first of the year, as close to first of the year as possible. The charge that we gave the selection committee was April.
I think
have
the
candidates
charge
to
we
us by
gave them
April
was to
15th.
have someone if I recall correctly, it was to have recommendations back to us by April 15th. I
Right.
think April 15th was the date.
So, I mean, I'm leaning more towards a full-time, because you talk January, February, March, April, that's 4 months. Could be a little bit longer.
Could be
depending.
longer, could be up
Right.
to 6 months.
Right. So I would, personally, I would feel more comfortable with a full-time interim town administrator.
That doesn't know what he's doing?
Again, okay, all right, that's fine.
Can I
Any-
ask you a question?
Sure.
Why do you think we'd get less candidates if it was open-ended, part-time and full-time?
Because I think people are looking for specific types of roles. That's what I think. And I think if you don't specify the role, then people aren't going to apply for it. I think you need to
Okay.
specify the role.
Kind of too
I
open-ended?
think it's two different things. I think if people are looking for the full-time, some people are looking for that full-time role. Some people are, they're retired and they're looking for a smaller role. That's
Sure.
all.
So you've got people asking questions, hey, what are you looking for? Okay,
Yeah, I think
get
so.
it.
I think so. And I think today is November 16th. December 31st, not very far away. It's questionable whether we can actually have someone in that role by December 31st. But I think we have to do everything we can to try to make sure that happens. So, all right. All right. Any other thoughts from anyone? All right. Well, we have a motion from Mr. Belvin. Mr. Belvin has stepped out.
Maybe we should take a
Yes, I want to give him an opportunity to vote on his own motion, so why don't we take a 5-minute recess and we'll come back. Okay, we are back in session. So we have a motion. I'm sorry, Shelby, was there a second on Mr. Belvin's motion?
Yeah,
Yeah,
just for
yeah.
discussion.
Okay.
And I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay.
Okay.
So right now we have no motion. Is there a motion on the floor for interim town administrator?
I'd like to make a motion to instruct Mrs. Weston to advertise for a full-time interim town administrator.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
4-1. It passes. All right. All right, that concludes that agenda item. Next up is a discussion and possible vote on the town administrator bylaw.
Yeah, I brought this up, and I guess more so right now, I guess it's great that we can talk about it, but more so, I wanted to make sure we at least got it on the town meeting warrant as a placeholder, because it was supposed to go on last town meeting. It somehow got left off, so I want to make sure that it makes it onto this town meeting.
It's on there, and I think we had that discussion actually quite a while ago. I know I had it with Mr. Belvin, and I gave him my assurances it would be on there, and it will be on there.
Great. Do we have a copy of how far we got last time? Because I see like the minutes and stuff, but do we have?
So we have in your packet, we have a copy of the town administrator bylaw.
Right.
I don't know, and that was my question as well, I don't know whether this document has the changes
Right.
that we talked about.
And so, Mr. Chair, there's a copy of the bylaw, as you said, in here.
Yes?
And then right after that, there's a page from
Oh, okay.
from the select board meeting of March 16th, 2021.
Mhm.
And then Mrs. Weston highlighted.
All
I
right.
think
Yes,
it has all
I
the
do see that.
changes. Yeah.
Have you, do you see that now, Ms. Bogart? Right after?
Yeah, I would love to see it in a form that like we would present. I would love for us to just talk about it when we have the actual wording of what would go to town meeting. But the gist more was I want to make sure that there's a placeholder and that we do discuss it to bring to town meeting formally.
So would you like to table this for a future meeting when we have it? No?
Yeah, how can we make sure that we get a copy of what we discuss, not just the minutes?
Well, I think that's what you have here. You have it right here. You have a copy of what we discussed.
Right, but was it incorporated into a bylaw? Do we have a draft bylaw?
I don't think we ever got to that
Okay.
point. If I don't
Okay.
think we ever got to that point. So I don't think there was ever that draft bylaw to, I think we would have to go through the town administrator bylaw and create one,
Okay.
create the change.
So then based on the minutes here, incorporate it to the new one and have someone draft a new one?
Well, or any other changes you'd like to see made.
Okay.
But do you want to talk about that now, or would you like that?
I think the whole bylaw, we should really review it item by item to just make sure it's the way. I do have an addition that I'd like to see included. I didn't pass it out to the board, but if it's okay, can I read this addition to what I thought process?
Where would your addition go in the bylaw, Bob?
It would be a new item.
Okay.
Added. During the term of office for the town administrator, the select board will be the governing authority if conflicts arise related to the duties of the town administrator. The select board shall have all duties to investigate any allegations of employee elected or appointed. The select board shall have the final decision on any issue of discipline, demotion, removal, termination of employees and employees appointed officials when a conflict arises between employees, elected officials, and appointed officials and the town administrator.
Mr. Belvin, you said that was during the period of what? I just didn't hear. The first part of your statement.
During the term of an office of a town administrator. And this is just a conflict between, so that we have some means of, if there's an issue, that we can turn around and take over and deal with those issues as a board of selectmen.
I would like to see that in writing. Is it possible you could get some copies and just get it out to us, or perhaps email it
No
around
problem.
so we could have a chance to read it?
I'll,
Okay, so can I make a motion to continue this discussion at
A future
a future meeting?
Yeah.
Well, yes. Before we do that, are there any other comments from any members of the board? All right. That's fine. We'll continue it to a future meeting. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. All right. Next up is our town administrator update. Mr. LaFawn.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, a couple of things. Number one, it's been on our agenda for a little bit here, the zoning violations at 149 and 152 Plymouth Street. With regard to 152, there is a court hearing, a housing court on 11/29 at 1 p.m. This is regarding 152. So that is hopefully coming to a conclusion soon. The other property, 149, you'll recall at the last meeting, the building commissioner, upon the advice of town council, had recommended that a survey committee be set up to go out and survey the property, make a recommendation to the building commissioner. The survey committee did go out and ultimately did make a recommendation to the building commissioner that there is a violation and the house should be removed forthwith. Town council is now in receipt of that and it has drafted and will be sending a letter to the owner of that property. Some of you may have noticed the last storm did cause some additional damage.
Yes, it did.
So I think it actually becomes a little more, I'm not a building official, but I would suggest that the condition of that property is more of an issue now than it was before. So, Route 44 project, I think the most important thing is today, Mr. Townsend and I attended a meeting over at the fire station with the chief deputy and the assistant deputy, representatives of Hillwood and the fire engineers, and to discuss, the fire department's needs. The key issues involved here are water capacity, how much, how you would do it, above ground, underground, what's possible. A lot of technical concerns go into that, but in addition to that, there was a brief conversation about some of the capital needs. A lot of the conversation was somewhat technical, specific to, fire officials and engineering people. But I think it seemed as if, and certainly I'm sure Mr. Townsend can chime in here too, that there seems to be some closing of the gap here in terms of the town's needs. I think the department has done a very good job of getting across to Hillwood what and why the town's needs exist based upon the town's capacity in terms of its staffing and equipment. I think that message has gone through. There is, at the end of the meeting, Hillwood did provide a draft agreement. A draft agreement in terms of between the town and the developer. And the reason for that is going back in time, right from the beginning of this deliberation, the major question is for us to go to town meeting, it's kind of, again, the chicken or the egg. I mean, there isn't going to be an in-depth design of this project until they know that they've got the 65-foot capacity. So once again, before they have that, how do they design something? How do we make some sort of, put out some parameters for mitigation? So what's the instrument? So they did provide an agreement today, which is really a draft in terms of format. In order for us to go to town meeting and the fire chief and others to get up and basically say that their needs have been met, there needs to be some binding agreement that actually does commit Hillwood to making certain accommodations. For instance, as of right now, the fire chief doesn't know exactly what kind of capital equipment he would need until there's an actual final design. Well, that design isn't going to happen until such time that they know they've got the capacity they're seeking at town meeting. So what the town needs is a commitment from Hillwood that if this happens, they will indeed provide the mitigation that the fire department needs. So again, it's the chicken or the egg. So what legal instrument accomplishes that? That's been a little bit of the question the whole time here. So number one is defining the needs of the fire department and presumably other town agencies, but it's obviously primarily the fire department, and then defining what instrument would make them feel comfortable and town meeting feel comfortable that their needs and other public safety needs have been addressed. So, Mr. Townsend?
All I would say is I think that the town of Carver has an excellent advocate in Chief Weston, and I think we're lucky to have him in
no
the
question.
position he's in, because he's been just been very impressed with the way he's presented the town's needs,
Mhm.
and I think that's
I would agree.
that's all I would
Yeah.
have to say.
Can I, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Mr. Bell.
Aston. All right. Two things. Number one is there is whatever you guys talk to with the fire chief and Hillwood, that's being relayed to the redevelopment authority too. So they're in the loop of what's going on with that too.
Yeah, that's part of what the working group does.
I wasn't sure. You didn't say anybody from the redevelopment authority was at that
No,
meeting,
well,
so.
This was just an invitation from the chief. The meeting was actually his meeting with the fire science and Hillwood, and Mark and I were invited to attend their
Yeah.
be So there will be communication
I
with the
just-
RDA.
yeah,
And again, it'll start
absolutely.
next week between us, but obviously the
Yeah.
fire chief will be invited to meet with them too, obviously.
I was laughing because we just signed the police agreement for it, and that goes along. I'm like, is there any language we can grab from that to go with this? I mean, because
Yeah.
the whole 65, like, from when I looked at it, it said that from people that I've talked to, the difference between a 50-foot and a 65, there's no difference between the two. The design features of a 65-foot high building, there's a lot of issues with the fire department. And I support the fire chief and his staff immensely in this, because they are the experts on it. But we need to have something done. We need to have some breaking out there and have something done. So I think that, do we have a placeholder on the town meeting to have language about the 65-foot high?
We will, yes.
I'm asking for that right now. At least that we can go back to Hillwood and say, we have a placeholder on our town meeting.
Well, they're very familiar with the timeline they're working with. Very, very familiar with it.
Okay.
So that's,
And I just wanted to add, if I may, Mr. Chair, that currently our bylaw allows the height of buildings to be 40 feet in that green building, green
yes,
zone.
yes,
They can't even reach that right now.
right.
So that's really a serious issue. I'm also wondering, since I wasn't at the meeting, was there discussion about the potential for more police, given that with 24/7 truck traffic and the MIPA study saying that the trucks could not use 58 but had to use 44 east and west, that we might need more police
No.
just to enforce that?
Yeah, this was, today was specifically about the fire department's needs.
Okay.
Yeah, water, and equipment.
Water,
Mhm.
yeah.
That's right, so,
Definitely.
yeah,
Thanks.
the other piece that came up is, as some of you know, that they have a consultant performing a fiscal impact analysis. It's been a little slower than we had hoped. It's actually been a little slower than they had hoped. So they've been told that they should be getting a draft sometime. I think they said within a week, but today,
Sooner the better.
yesterday. So hopefully we'll have something to look at that will address some of these other public safety issues.
Anything else?
And the last thing I would say is we do have, as I say, we've got these two searches going on. We have interviewed candidates for town planner. Invited, obviously, the chair of the planning board and the chair of the RDA, Sharon Clark, who's also on the zoning board of appeals. So, and we hope to have a conclusion to that in the next week or so. The other position, the assessor, town assessor position, we do have a finalist that we're working with to hopefully complete an appointment. Ellen Blanchard, obviously, as the chair of the Board of Assessors, has been instrumental in helping us get to this point, as you would imagine. So hopefully, we'll have some good news on both of these positions in the next week or two.
All right. The Montello Street interchange, was there something
She's, you know.
on
Yes.
that?
I actually had something that I had printed off, yes. As we stand, with regard to the interchange, this past week, whether you've noticed it or not, because some of this is out in the woods, the site tree cutting has begun on the Montello Street realignment roadway. Let's get the whole project down firmly halfway. And this coming, also there's tree trimming, tree cutting. That is also going on a different part of the project. Sediment controls were installed, and portions of the drainage and pipe have been received, and they're on site, but they're probably out of sight, but on site, if you know what I mean. So this coming week, grubbing of the stumps will begin, some subgrading and initial drainage system construction. Now, hopefully you won't see much of that, but this is what's going on at the moment. And I think, as we've said before, I've notified you that with Mr. Walsh no longer being here as town planner, this has really fallen on our office, me and Elaine, and I want to give Elaine a lot of credit for her detail and diligence in terms of following up on all these, the billings and some of it. It's a lot of oversight. Some of it is performed by the town's, by VHB, the town's consulting engineer on this project. But the level of detail is that they are reviewing is not quite as detailed as Elaine is able to do, which is important when you're actually paying the bills. So again, a burden on us, but again, give Elaine a lot of credit for her efforts here.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. LaFawn. Yes, Mr.
With the Montello Street interchange, and I know one of the concerns that I've had is that once that's all finished, if no work's being done on the actual 44 development back there, are they still going to close off that road that we have existing going into those businesses? Because if there's nothing going on in that development area, then why should we close the road over?
I don't have an answer,
Yeah.
Bob.
If at some point we can get an answer to that it's not going to until there's actually some work being done at that 44 development.
I think that, to that question, I think it's a larger question about in terms of completing the work that's required by the grant and closing out that grant in a timely manner, whether or not that coincides with the project on Route 44. I think we've talked about it before. We have to fulfill the intent and the requirements of the grant. So even if the timetable is not aligned specifically with the larger project. So hopefully that won't be the case, but I think it's probably a little more complicated question than we would hope.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Moving forward, minutes, license, topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. There are none. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is December 7th. However, it's likely that we will have at least one additional meeting before then. Let's see, approval of minutes of 10:19 and 11:2.
Can I ask that these be tabled because I have to look at video?
You have to look at video?
I'd like to go back and look at videos, yeah. Prior meeting videos.
I'd like to at least approve the minutes of the 10:19.
Yeah, because we have to approve them within 30 days.
We have to do it in a timely manner. I can call a recess if you'd like to read through the minutes.
No, I need to watch the video of the meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I can kind of help with this, is that we can approve the minutes as written, and then if you want to come back, we can open the minutes up and have it change the minutes at that time
type of amendment
that you want to go ahead and do.
I was going to suggest that, yeah, why don't we do that?
Can we do that? That way we're in compliance with the open meeting law.
That's right.
All right, by getting them approved, but we can come back and change them at a future date to say we'd like to make modifications to it. Is that okay?
Whatever.
And please, let's just, we did have an issue before. It's important that we approve minutes on a timely basis. So if we need to review something, they're always going to be on the agenda. So is there a motion on 10:19?
I'll make a motion, we approve as written at this point, and the ability to open up at a future date to make changes.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that, but we don't need, we can always amend them.
Right, we can always.
Right.
I mean, you don't need to put that in the motion.
Okay. You have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, it is 4-1. Let's see, on November 2nd.
I wasn't here,
I
sorry.
move that we approve the minutes of November 2nd, 2021.
I'll second it for discussion. Is there discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
3-1. And you're abstaining, right, Mr. Belvin?
I'm abstaining, yes.
Okay.
Was not here.
And then the executive session minutes of October 19, 2021 for approval and not for release.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Is there a second? I'll second it for discussion. Discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. All right. Let's see. Select Board Community Announcements. Mr. Hoffman.
I have nothing at this time.
Okay. Ms. Hewens?
I have nothing either at this time. Thank you.
Ms. Bogart?
Yeah, I never get to be the fun one. Happy early Thanksgiving, everybody.
Just going to say that, though.
All right, Mr. Belvin.
I just want to let my members know that I'm not happy with some of the inaction that's been done on this board. I posted on Facebook, I'm not happy, and I just wanted you guys to see me in person and let you know I'm not happy. The rationale for this is that we need to hold people accountable, and I don't think that this board wants to do that. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Belvin. And just for myself, I would also like to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving. Select Board notes. We only have a couple, and they're both from Ms. Bogart.
Okay, so a couple of meetings ago, I said that I would like us to follow through on more stuff. So my first one is that I would like us to talk about working on the scenic road designations and meetings, because it came up during the Indian Street conversations, and it was said that we would work on that. So I think we should work toward finding out what makes a scenic road, what in town might qualify for a scenic road, and what happens if something is designated a scenic road. Because work has already been done, so I think we should do that. And then number two is I think we need to start a conversation with Eversource somehow on how to improve our restoration efforts on their end. You know, we are becoming a hub of generation for the power grid with our solar farms. We host a big transmission substation up the road and potentially a giant battery. So we are doing a lot of stuff to help other towns get power, but we don't have a strong distribution grid in town. So I think we should do our town the right thing and try to talk to them what can be done to the grid to strengthen Carver's power and power restoration, because there's room for a distribution substation up there which could restore a whole lot of the center of town faster. So we're doing a lot for other towns. I think after this one, I think the time's to come to talk to them to say, what can you do for us?
So, and that's fine. We can, the only thing I would say is be aware that Tom Walsh has regular conversations with Eversource. And you might want to discuss that with him, because he has a lot of information about how that works and what happens. And
Yeah, and it's
like I
not
said,
about responses to power outages.
No, but he's in regular conversations with them about what their priorities are when there are power outages and things like that. So
Yeah, this is
just
about preventing outages.
No.
So
Again, it's just something you may want to have a discussion with him. That's all. But okay. That being said, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Good night, everybody. Thank you.